So I've been reading a lot, and I know that might come as a surprise to you if you go to my YouTube channel and see not very many recent review videos. But if you follow me on Goodreads, which you should be, then you will know. Reading machine I have been. I am not BSing around. I have been reading my most anticipated releases the moment I get them in my hands, and it has been a blast. In fact, so far, this has been my highest rated year ever in terms of giving 5 stars to books, and I am a big 3-star girly over here. Or DNF. I am a big DNFer, which means I didn't finish the book. I will be the first person to throw a hidden romance plot across the room. Now, I do have this organized. I have 3 books that are new and available now that you can get today if I convince you, which I'm pretty good at convincing. And I have 2 upcoming books that are not out yet, but I get the privilege to give you my first impressions. All adult fantasy, by the way. My brain keeps telling me that I'm really in the mood for some like sci-fi horror or just horror in general, and then my brain becomes a toddler and only reaches out for adult fantasy. Like it's a giant piece of candy. Or a boob, I don't know. So I am very excited to talk about all of these books finally, but before we get into them, I'd like to thank BetterHelp for supporting and sponsoring today's video. As you guys know, this past almost a year now, I had my first seizure on April 19th of last year, so that's a fun anniversary coming up. Therapy has been essential for me. BetterHelp is who I started my therapy journey with, and they just made it so simple to get over the hurdle of seeking help, having an unbiased third party to talk to about whatever issue I may be facing, which has been a lot, which has just aided my own personal growth over the past several months or even over the past several years, and led to a lot of insights and discoveries that may have taken me a little bit longer to stumble upon on my own. To get started, all you have to do is just fill out a questionnaire and you get matched with a therapist in as little as a few days. BetterHelp's diverse network of over 30,000 licensed professionals have a wide range of specialties and backgrounds, so they're pretty equipped to find someone that can help with whatever you might be struggling with. But one of my favorite things about them is, for whatever reason, if you're not like jiving with your therapist, it's free to switch at no extra cost at any given time. So if you'd like to try out BetterHelp for yourself, you know where the link is in that description down below, or you can go to betterhelp.com/hollyheartsbooks and get 10% off your very first month of therapy. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about that first book, and that is The Radiant King. First of all, and I'm going to be real, I could say this for all of the covers of the books that I'm talking about today, besides one maybe, and we will get to that, but I love this cover. The stained glass window in the background, I just love it. So this is obviously adult fantasy, and the story follows 6 immortal siblings who once ruled the world and stepped away from power until one brother, the rebel, decides he's going to become a god and start a new faith. And of course, as you would assume, this sparks a conflict with his siblings, especially 2 of them, who team up with a powerful princess to stop him. Man, Daglish loves his religion in his fantasy books. It's always a prominent element, and I just expect it every single time. If you haven't read from this author, I highly recommend it. This is honestly a perfect introduction to his writing because I personally think it's his best book so far. And he's written quite a lot. It's so easy to read, it's not overly complicated, and you still get that adult fantasy high stakes goodness. Okay, well, not to make this like a David Daglish video, but he's been a freaking writing machine lately and actually had 2 recent releases, so of course we're going to talk about the other one, and that is Level Unknown. We all know Daglish can write amazing fantasy worlds and characters, as was proven with The Radiant King, so I love that he took that, which he's really good at again, and brought it into a different fantasy subgenre, lit RPG. Though I do keep saying fantasy, both of these new books of his have major sci-fi elements, or maybe the word would be undertones. I noticed that with both of these, so maybe slowly inching closer to like a full-blown sci-fi in the future. Now that I would be excited for. So in this book, which is far different than The Radiant King, the main character Nick and his brother are working together on an exploratory space mission when they come across an artifact that communicates with Nick. He collapses and he finds out that his mind has connected to this artifact, and he gets transported into a world within it every time he falls asleep. It's very anime/manga plot, almost like Log Horizon or like Sword Art Online or something. Anyways, this world is so fun to explore. It's kind of like that with The Radiant King, some of the city scenes. I love stuff like that. I love quest travel fantasy, and you get that from both of these books. Have I ever read a lit RPG? Maybe one when I was a kid. I was really worried about it when they would actually come into the story, that it would bog it down and make it tedious to read, but it didn't at all. We also get the perspective of what's happening on the outside during all of this. So we do get like breaks in between, like how his brother is being affected, and it's like sci-fi, fantasy, and contemporary all mixed into one. Daglish has told me how excited he is for people to read book 2, as he thinks it's his best work yet, and I believe him. Get on this now. Book 2, which is called Level Ascension, is coming out in May, and then book 3 later this year. So back to back to back, we love that around here. Moving along to the next book, which is Grave Empire. I was so happy to hear that Richard Swan was returning to the world of the Empire of the Wolf trilogy, but in a new age. We are 200 years in the future, and it is more grimdark than ever, very flintlock fantasy in tone. I desperately wanted this book to perform well when it came to sales, because I want more of this Orbit. This is like old school Orbit to me, and I miss that. I miss that so much. The Radiant King, and then Grave Empire, and then maybe more Django Wexler and Andrea Stewart. Like, I want more books from them desperately, because I feel like they write such amazing big fantasy worlds and plots, and then we get this beautiful masterpiece. This is an utterly compelling story of dark magic, nefarious plots, and a nation divided by war. Arcane practices are now outlawed, a mysterious plague is spreading, and 2 monks have arrived claiming they've lost all contact with the afterlife. And an ancient prophecy called the Great Silence may be coming, and with it bringing the end of the world. High stakes to the max, and again, don't underestimate the darkness. This is definitely grimdark, chock full of chilling scenes, and I need more. It was so fascinating to read, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next book, which unfortunately we're gonna have to wait a while for. Okay, now we're going to move on to the books that are not released yet, and that first one is The Drop of Corruption. This releases on April 1st, so very soon, and it's actually the most recent book that I finished. It's the sequel to The Tainted Cup, which was very popular when it released, and everyone seemed to have loved it, and I gotta say, and it's saying a lot, as I loved the Tainted Cup. It was pretty flawless in my eyes. I think I loved the sequel even more. So the best way to describe these books is like Sherlock Holmes in a unique fantasy setting that is very bizarre. We follow our detective Anna and our assistant Den on yet another adventure, and this time we swap the majestic empire that we were in book 1 for a neighboring kingdom, and here we encounter murder, mystery, and secrets in the jungle. So maybe throw in like a little bit of Indiana Jones as well. So Anna is called to solve the mystery when a treasury officer appears to have disappeared into thin air. He was in a room completely guarded and somehow just disappeared. The plot is like a real Russian doll of questions layered over top each other. Every time you think something has been solved, bam, there appear like 4 more questions. I enjoyed it immensely. You kind of have to go into these books not trying to make sense of things, because the answers are eventually ruled out in a fascinating, though slightly chaotic way. This deserved 5 giant Leviathan stars for me, for sure. And that is all I'm going to say about this one, as it is a sequel, so gotta stop myself from yapping too much. Let's move on to the final book. And that final book was probably my #1 most anticipated release of 2025. And that is The Devils. This is the cover I'm like not so entirely thrilled by, but that's controversial, and we don't get into drama in this neck of the woods, besides saying I hate romantasy. That really gets people fired up. So this was my 14th Joe Abercrombie book. You would think I eventually like get sick of him at this point, but nope. So because I have read 14 books by this author, I'd say I have some credentials in letting you know if this is a good start if you have never read from Mr. Abercrombie. And I'd say yes, this is a good start because it's a standalone. It's easy to read and it's amazing. It's not intimidating like the giant world of The First Law, which is 9 books, or 10 if you include the collection of novellas. The story here is like a fantasy heist with a lot of morally gray characters, which is what Joe Abercrombie is best at writing, with all of their own motives. It's an action-packed adventure with humor and this like medieval setting with magic. So the Devils are a crew thrown together by the church, and they're kind of like the Suicide Squad, except there's a vampire, an elf, a priest, a werewolf, a necromancer. They're all tasked to find a long-lost princess, basically, who is the true heir to the throne of this sacred city. Sure, it sounds basic, but it's truly the characters that suck you in. It's got the classic Abercrombie humor, but it also has those gut-wrenching plot devices as well. This was incredible. It lands in bookstores in May, and I'm so grateful to have gotten to read it so early. Alrighty, everyone, so those are all the books that I'm going to be talking about today. I have read more books than this recently, but I really only wanted to talk about the big notable ones. I gave all of these 4 or 5 stars, mostly 5 actually, and I've just been reading banger after banger this year when it comes to adult fantasy. There have been no disappointments for me so far in that department, but that could change. Thank you so much for tuning in today's video. I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts. If you've read any of these, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And also, before you go, be sure to check out that BetterHelp offer linked down below in the description box. Even just clicking it really helps me out. I really appreciate it. So until we meet again, happy reading.